It is day 2 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, she is one of Combs' many accusers, testifying as a central witness.
Is she ready?
Very ready and confident. Thank you.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend.
They used to call him a music mogul, a kingmaker, the ultimate success story in hip-hop. But just yesterday, as Cassie Ventura took the witness stand, that perfectly polished image shattered right before everyone's eyes. Diddy's complexion went ghostly pale as his former girlfriend described scenes so graphic and unsettling that even the most experienced courtroom journalists sat frozen in disbelief. The same man who once ruled an entire empire suddenly couldn't even manage his own
When she walked in there, Rachel, she had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. She said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on, to the lighting in the room, to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak-off, the freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21, she was young, she didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend. Combs has pleaded not guilty. His attorneys argue the video is evidence of jealousy, not sex trafficking. And now for the first time, jurors are hearing what Cassie has to say about that and other aspects of their 10-year relationship.
Expressions, as Cassie laid bare everything, and yes, we mean absolutely everything, that allegedly happened behind those closed doors. For years, Sean Diddy Combs strutted through the music world like he owned every inch of it, because, truthfully, he almost did. This was the man who built Bad Boy Records from the ground up, transformed unknown artists into global sensations, and expanded his empire far beyond music into fashion lines, vodka labels, and television networks. On paper, Diddy was the blueprint of success, the mogul who taught the world how to turn hip-hop into serious money. But that glossy image, that carefully maintained persona of genius businessman, mentor, and creative visionary, it was allegedly hiding something much darker, at least if what's coming out in court is to be believed. While magazines splashed his face on covers for his business brilliance, while fans screamed at concerts, while the world admired that confident red carpet smile, Cassie Ventura was reportedly trapped in a world no one else could see. That contrast, the one between Diddy's public image and what Cassie described, hit everyone in the courtroom like a punch to the gut. Here's a man who built his brand on professionalism. Tailored suits, flawless grooming, always polished. In interviews. But the allegations tell another story entirely, one of someone shockingly different behind closed doors, someone his fans wouldn't even recognize. Court reporters clocked how Diddy walked into day 2 like the billionaire executive he's always portrayed, flanked by a squad of elite attorneys, casually nodding at onlookers, even flashing smiles. The man looked like he was headed to a boardroom, not about to face explosive claims from an ex. But that confidence? It didn't last long. Within 30 minutes of Cassie taking the stand, witnesses described Diddy's entire vibe crumbling. The bravado vanished. The confidence collapsed. That stoic CEO face began to crack. As Cassie went into vivid details of their relationship, his legal team started jumping in with objection after objection, almost scrambling to stop her words from landing. Can you even imagine this? The man who masterminded million-dollar deals, who launched global careers, now totally unable to manage his own expressions in a courtroom. People described Diddy physically squirming as Cassie spoke. The roles had flipped, and flipped hard. Every eye in the courtroom was glued to Diddy when Cassie took the stand. His face reportedly went completely pale, like all the color had drained from it. He started tugging on his tie, then his sleeves, then just wringing his hands. At one, point, he was scribbling notes and shoving them to his lawyers so fast that one of them had to literally motion for him to slow down. One journalist called it watching a man realize he's lost control of the narrative for the first time in his life. Someone else described Diddy looking physically sick as Cassie, calm and composed, described the details of their relationship. A third observer noted that he kept closing his eyes, like he physically couldn't bear to hear what she was saying. And this was just the start. As Cassie kept testifying into the afternoon, it became brutally clear why Diddy was so rattled. Because the next allegation she was about to drop, it was the kind that sends tremors through the entire music world, the kind that threatens to burn down a legacy. This man, who for decades shaped his own myth, was about to face a version of his story he couldn't control, couldn't edit, couldn't spin. And then came the moment that stunned, even seasoned prosecutors. Cassie, on the record, admitted that at one point she looked forward to the so-called freak-offs. The courtroom was stunned. Why would she say that? When asked directly, "Did you ever enjoy them?" Cassie broke down. "I did," she said, "but only because it meant I could be alone with Combs. And I loved him." That moment laid bare not just alleged physical abuse, but deep emotional manipulation. She painted a picture of someone young, impressionable, eager to launch a music career. Someone who signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment, led by Sean Combs. She described being dazzled by him, loving him, not understanding what she was getting into, especially sexually, and being led by him, taught by him. She said it herself. "I was young. I was naive. I didn't know better." She truly thought she was with someone who cared, someone who'd lift her up. But after the freak-offs, she quickly realized she was wrong. One of the most haunting moments. She said that after the first freak-off, she felt disgusting. She didn't want to do it again. And yet, when she tried to bring it up in an email, which jurors saw, Combs replied, "I know you don't want to do it." Her response? She backpedaled, saying, "Oh no, that's not it." But it was. That email, from 2010, was the beginning of a silent struggle. She said she didn't want to keep doing it, but she felt like she had no choice, and prosecutors didn't hold back. They dived right into the core of her abuse claims. Cassie told the jury, quote, "He would bash my head, knock me down, drag me, kick me, stomp on my head while I was down." Then she detailed the nature of those freak-offs, saying they involved escorts and were conducted under Diddy's direction. She claimed they became so frequent it felt like her job to arrange them. She said she didn't feel like she could say no, that she feared retaliation, that she feared blackmail. At times, her testimony came in between deep, painful breaths. Diddy, sitting silently at the defense table, hands folded in his lap, appeared to just listen. And when Cassie finally spoke, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone expected this day to come, but no one, not even Diddy's top-dollar legal team, was prepared for the storm she brought. After years of silence, of holding it all in, Cassie finally had her moment. And she used it. She started small, and that's what made it hit even harder. Cassie began by describing how she met Diddy at just 19. He was already a multi-millionaire, deeply entrenched in the industry. She was a young model, hoping for a break. The power imbalance? Massive. And according to her, Diddy knew exactly how to exploit it. Her testimony built like a horror film. You know something awful is coming, but you can't look away. First came the smaller control issues. How he allegedly demanded to know her whereabouts at all times. How he would show up without warning if she was out with friends. Then came the career control. How she claimed he would threaten to shelve her music if she didn't obey. How he allegedly sabotaged collaborations if he felt threatened by another artist. But the most chilling moment? Court transcripts reveal that Cassie described how Diddy allegedly installed tracking software on her phone. She testified that he'd sometimes call her minutes after she arrived somewhere, already knowing where she was. She claimed he systematically cut her off from friends, anyone who might plant ideas of leaving him. One by one, her support system allegedly vanished until he was all she had left, and in court, it was explosive. The judge had to call for order 3 separate times during this part of the testimony. Diddy couldn't keep still. He shook his head, whispered loudly to his lawyers, made faces, all in full view of the jury. Each time the judge warned him, he'd hold it together for 5 minutes, and then start again. It felt like watching a man who'd never been told no suddenly realize he couldn't control the room. Then came the moment that changed everything. Cassie reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and handed it to her attorney. And then, projected onto the courtroom screens for everyone to see, were the text messages, emails, DMs. The look on Diddy's face? Absolute shock. It was like he didn't even know she'd kept them. There were messages where he allegedly apologized for violent outbursts, messages where he reportedly threatened her career if she talked, messages that directly contradicted years of polished PR statements. But those texts? They were just the warm-up. Because what followed were allegations of physical assaults, deep, disturbing details that silenced the courtroom. Cassie described being thrown against walls during arguments. She described one incident where she says he pushed her down, a flight of stairs in a Miami rental. And most horrifying of all, she testified about multiple times he allegedly choked her until she nearly passed out, only stopping when she went limp. Jurors were visibly shaken. One older woman on the panel wiped tears. A male juror couldn't make eye contact with Diddy. Even seasoned court reporters admitted they weren't ready for the level of detail Cassie revealed. But all of this, the surveillance, the manipulation, the violence, was just the setup for the moment that would blow the case wide open. The Four Seasons incident. Some of this had been whispered about. But no one, not the blogs, not the press, not even past lawsuits, had ever heard this version. Until now. Cassie, visibly pregnant, her voice barely above a whisper, said, "I thought I was going to die that night." And the courtroom leaned in. She described what started as a typical industry after-party. She mingled, talked with another music exec. But when Diddy saw her, his entire demeanor changed. His smile vanished. She testified that he grabbed her arm so hard it left marks and leaned in to whisper threats in her ear, all while keeping a calm face for the crowd. Then, in front of everyone, she said he dragged her across the hotel lobby toward the elevators. She cried. She tried to pull away. Hotel security approached, but once they recognized Diddy, they simply asked if everything was okay. He said yes, Cassie testified, and that was enough. They just walked away. No one asked me if I was okay. Then came the photos. Cassie's lawyer submitted pictures she took of herself the next morning. Images showing bruises on her arms, a split lip, red marks around her neck. Not staged, not professional, just shaky bathroom mirror selfies, which somehow made them even more devastating. Cassie said she took them because she knew no one would believe her otherwise. Diddy's legal team scrambled. They objected, claiming the photos weren't authenticated, that they weren't submitted during discovery, that they could be from anything. The judge denied every objection. The photos stayed up on screen. And the jury's reaction? Immediate. 1. Woman covered her mouth in shock. 2 male jurors looked away, unable to stare at the images. One in the back scribbled notes so fast her hand was visibly shaking. This hotel incident wasn't just a turning point. It was a bombshell. One that Diddy's team hadn't seen coming. One that wasn't mentioned in any previous filings or interviews. A moment so raw, so personal, so damning, it landed like a thunderclap. Response because they didn't know it was coming. The look of panic on his lawyers' faces was obvious to everyone in the courtroom. Cassie described how Diddy allegedly threw a champagne bottle at her head, missing her by inches and shattering against the wall. She testified that he destroyed the hotel room in a rage, breaking a lamp, flipping a table, and punching a hole in the bathroom door. Most disturbing of all, she claimed he prevented her from leaving the room for over 48 hours, taking her phone and threatening consequences if she tried to call for help. As this part of the testimony ended, everyone in that courtroom turned to look at Diddy. His reaction would become the moment that defined the entire trial and possibly the rest of his career. I think what the defense is going to say is that this wasn't blackmail. This was not coercion. This was consensual. We know that Cassie started out with Sean Combs as an early person with someone who was trying to get her career started, and he was going to help her. That's what the defense is going to say, that she was starting out and wanted someone to support her. They did their first record deal together. That's something I think the defense is going to focus on. And had it not been for Sean Combs, she wouldn't be where she is right now. The prosecution obviously is saying he was in control. It may have started out as a consensual. It may have started out with her being excited about seeing him, but ultimately he took control of that relationship. He took control of her career. This is their key witness, and she's on that stand trying to explain all of the charges that the prosecution wants to hit home with that jury. You know, there was a moment early on when Cassie mentioned Dallas Austin, who she called a friend who's a producer. So I don't know if that's someone that we're going to hear from. We know that there were pictures shown to prospective jurors that are well-known celebrities. You know, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Lauren London. We don't know, though, how they fit yet into why they were even asked. Do you know these people? Are you familiar with them? So, the prosecution is questioning Cassie right now, still questioning her. Defense hasn't even got a chance to, that might change based on the timing, but, because she's such a key witness, it's likely that she will be on that stand the rest of the day. We learned that Cassie referred to him as Pop. Pop and Sean Combs would refer to her as CC. The prosecution says, what does CC stand for? They said she said Cassie Combs. What kind of witness is Cassie coming off as to the jurors? I think naturally when you look at her visually, people see that she's pregnant and looking like she's due any day now. So they might, have empathy, sympathy for her in that way. But we don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was, someone she said that was trying to figure out who she was at that time and who she was allowed to be. Now you're looking at somebody that's almost 40 years old, totally different person. But even in describing what was going on at her at that time, taking drugs, trying to please Sean Combs, she's really just sort of laying out the case for her not having a lot of control. So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she said she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now, but I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today, she broke down on that courtroom. It was the moment nobody in that courtroom will ever forget. Diddy, the man who built an empire on his ability to stay cool under pressure, completely lost it right in front of everyone. The facade cracked, then shattered, and what was underneath wasn't pretty. You have to understand, this is a guy who spent decades perfecting his public image. The smooth-talking businessman, the calm, collected mogul, the man who never lets you see him sweat. But as Cassie's testimony reached its most damaging points, that carefully maintained mask started slipping. Court reporters who've covered hundreds of celebrity cases said they'd never seen anything like it. Diddy literally transformed before their eyes. From the confident industry titan who walked in that morning to a man who looked cornered and desperate as the afternoon wore on. With each new allegation Cassie made, he seemed to physically shrink in his chair. His legal team was working overtime. I heard from someone who was sitting right behind them that Diddy's main attorney kept putting his hand on Diddy's arm, trying to calm him down. At one point, one of the lawyers actually passed him a note that reportedly said, "Stay calm," in all capital letters, but it wasn't working. Things got so bad that Diddy slammed his hand down on the table when Cassie described an incident at his Hampton house. He hit it so hard that the sound echoed through the courtroom. The judge immediately stopped proceedings and warned him, "Mr. Combs, if you can't control yourself," everyone saw it. The jury, the press, the entire courtroom witnessed the exact moment the mask fully slipped. Diddy, the master of composure, had just cracked wide open in front of everyone. And the worst part? It wasn't during cross-examination. It wasn't under legal pressure. It was because he lost control. Again. As the court recessed, whispers rippled through the gallery like wildfire. Reporters scrambled to draft their updates, court sketch artists rushed to capture the chaos, and the jurors? They sat, stunned. That outburst wasn't just emotional. It was strategic disaster. It validated everything Cassie had just described. The threats, the volatility, the control. All of it suddenly felt frighteningly real. No longer abstract accusations, but living, breathing proof right there in that courtroom. Cassie didn't flinch. She stayed seated, eyes focused forward, refusing to react to his yelling. It was a moment of poise that stood in stark contrast to Diddy's unraveling. And just like that, the dynamic that once defined their relationship had been flipped completely on its head. What was once his courtroom no longer felt like his. Messages hit like a tidal wave. Each one not only backed up Cassie's testimony, it amplified it. These weren't anonymous sources or distant acquaintances. These were insiders, icons, people the jury recognized, people Diddy had once called friends. And now their words were being used to dismantle the empire he'd spent decades building. As the messages kept rolling, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. What had started as a he said, she said narrative was quickly morphing into something far more damning, a pattern, a history, a culture of silence finally cracking open under the weight of receipts too real to ignore. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing every gasp, every objection, every flicker of emotion that crossed Diddy's face. One journalist tweeted, "This feels less like a trial and more like the fall of a dynasty." Even the judge seemed shaken by the magnitude of what was unfolding in front of him. By the time the session adjourned, Diddy wasn't just losing a legal battle, he was losing control of his story, his legacy, and possibly his freedom. And Cassie? She didn't need to raise her voice. The evidence spoke louder than anything she could have said. This wasn't just testimony anymore. This wasn't just about legal consequences anymore. It was about cultural collapse. About watching a man who once stood at the pinnacle of music, fashion, and power now sit hollow-eyed as the truth unraveled everything he'd built. The myth of invincibility shattered. The loyal entourage gone. The narrative he tried to control for years no longer his to tell. Cassie didn't just bring allegations, she brought receipts, and the kind that hit harder than any headline. Screenshots, audio, witnesses from inside his own world. Her courage didn't just expose what allegedly happened behind closed doors. It exposed how long those doors were held shut by fear, money, and power. By the end of day 2, even the media tone had shifted. This was no longer Diddy versus Cassie. This was a dismantling, a public stripping away of celebrity armor. And underneath, what the world saw wasn't a mogul. It was a man cornered by his own past. One court reporter summarized it best. This wasn't a trial. This was an unmasking. And the silence Diddy used to command? Now it was surrounding him.